There's a small town tucked between two highways and a tired river, somewhere in the lower south. The kind of place that never made it to any map people actually use. If you drive by on a humid evening, you might see a faint shimmer of water behind a row of cypress trees, a lake so still it looks more like a secret than a landscape. At the edge of that lake stands the Green family house, a single-story place with peeling white paint, a crooked porch, and a roof that sighs every time the wind changes. For 50 years, Martha Green kept that house alive not by fixing it, but by refusing to let it die. People in town used to say the house was beautiful but unlucky. Its back faced the lake instead of the sunrise. And old folks whispered that a home turning its back on the light will always collect shadows inside. Martha never argued with them. She'd smile, the way women do when they have outlived everyone who warned them. On summer mornings, she fed the catfish at the dock and talked to her late husband like he still sat beside her. Some days she could almost believe he answered, but most days, the only voice left was the water. Inside, the house smelled of cedar, mothballs, and the quiet kind of loneliness that never asks to be pitied. 3 photographs stood on the mantel: Victor, the eldest, Caleb, the middle son, and Quinn, the youngest, all grown men now, scattered across the state but bound, at least on paper, to the same last name. Martha used to think that raising 3 boys would fill her old age with company. She was half right. They called often enough to remind her she wasn't forgotten, and seldom enough to prove that she was. Then one July afternoon, a man from the county office came by with a clipboard and a polite smile. He said the state was extending the interstate, a new road that would slice straight through the marshland behind her house. "They'll buy you out, ma'am." Fair price. Good compensation, he said, like money could explain what that lake meant. Martha nodded, but when he left, she sat on the porch for hours, staring at the water. The wind moved the surface in slow ripples, and for the first time she noticed how it never reflected her face quite right. Maybe the lake already knew what was coming. That night, she called her sons. Victor answered first, his voice tired, lined with smoke and late bills. He said, "Mom, that's a blessing. You can finally move closer to me." But he didn't mean her. He meant the money. Caleb, ever the businessman, started asking numbers before she even finished the story. "How much per acre? Mom, you should get it appraised. I can help handle the paperwork." He said help the way people do when they really mean control. Quinn, the youngest, listened quietly. Then he said, "If you sell, can I take the old shed? I've been thinking of turning it into a workshop." even love in this family had invoices attached. When the calls ended, Martha sat in the kitchen, surrounded by silence. The refrigerator hummed like an anxious animal. She thought about the lake again, how it had waited behind the house all these years, patient, unchanging, watching. The next morning, she woke with a tightness in her chest. It wasn't fear or sadness, just a weight she couldn't place. She brewed her coffee, fed the catfish, and whispered into the mist, "If they take this lake, Lord, take me first." She didn't know anyone was listening, but somewhere across the state, each of her sons began to dream of home, not the warmth of it, but the property lines, the measure of square feet, the value per yard. By August, the town buzzed with talk of compensation checks. Neighbors compared figures like lottery winnings, and every night, the lake behind Martha's house glowed a little darker, like it was soaking up all the greed it heard from the shore. One evening, Caleb drove down in his pickup. He brought fried chicken and a smile. He kissed his mother on the forehead and spread maps over the kitchen table. "Look here, Mom," he said. "If you sell the whole lot, you could get nearly 90,000. That's more than enough to start fresh, maybe an apartment near Baton Rouge." Martha traced the blue line that marked the new highway. "It cut right through the lake," she said softly. "You think I should sell the water too?" Caleb laughed. "It's not water, Mom. It's land value." She didn't answer. Sometimes silence is the only protest left to old people. That night, while Caleb snored on the couch, Martha stood by the window. Moonlight spilled across the lake, silver and merciless. She remembered her husband's hands shaping the dock, the way he'd say, "As long as the lake's behind us, we'll never dry out." But the world had changed. Now the lake was just an obstacle to someone else's progress. She pressed her palm against the glass and whispered, "Maybe it's true. A house that turns its back on the sun will forget how to forgive." Outside, a heron lifted from the reeds and vanished into the fog. Word travels in small towns the way smoke travels through old boards. It finds every crack. By September, everyone knew the green property was worth more on paper than it ever was as a home. Men at the diner started calling Victor the lucky one, and the church ladies began bringing over pound cake with questions baked into the frosting. Victor came first with apologies that sounded like rehearsals. He hugged his mother and kept his eyes on the floor. "Mom," he said, "this could change everything. I could settle up, get clean, help you move. I'll make it right this time." He didn't say what this time had been the pawned tools, the bounced checks, the nights he disappeared into a haze of cards and neon. Martha didn't ask. She'd learned that asking is a kind of invitation for disappointment to sit down and stay. Caleb arrived with numbers. He always did. He talked interest rates, contractors, closing costs. He said things like, "We'll structure it fairly, and I'll split proceeds after a management fee. And let's do this properly so nobody gets hurt." People who fear blood often invent paperwork. Quinn slipped in late, his hands in his pockets, a quiet apology of a man. He walked the property lines, fingertips grazing fence rails as if measuring loyalty by touch. "I don't want much," he said. "Just the shed, Mom, maybe the little boat if the state doesn't take it. The rest you decide." Martha watched them the way old trees watch storms, not with surprise, but with an old ache that knows what wind can do to a house that's already cracked. Her breath grew short. The stairs felt longer. She slept sitting up. Only Lily noticed the way her grandmother's hands trembled when she tried to pour tea. She began showing up after school with soup and a stack of library books. She read out loud until Martha's eyes closed, then sat and listened to the shallow tide of sleep. One evening, the family gathered around the kitchen table. Caleb spread the purchase offer flat and weighed it with a jar of buttons. Victor cleared his throat. "Mom, you shouldn't have to worry about any of this. I'll take the lead." Caleb's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You taking the lead is how we got here. Vic, let's be adults for once." Quinn stared out the window at the lake. "I still think we should keep it," he said softly. "It's not just water." Caleb tapped the paper. "It's a liability. Property tax, maintenance, erosion control. The state is offering a number that won't come again." Martha folded her hands. "When your father built that dock," she said, "he told me, as long as the lake's behind us, we'll never dry out. He meant our hearts, not our wallets." Victor winced, as if love itself were a debt collector. "Mom, with this money, we could finally start over." Martha looked at each of her son, one hungry, one careful, one absent in the safety of softness. "Listen to me," she said, voice thinning. "Land is where love used to live. If you sell the land, you'd better find a place for love to go." No one answered. The refrigerator hummed a nervous chord. The lake held its breath. By the time the appraisal came in, Martha was coughing at night and forgetting the kettle on the stove. The doctor called it age and humidity. Martha called it a house that has turned its back on the sun. On a Tuesday, Victor disappeared for 2 days, then returned with a fox's grin and a promise that he was handling some personal business. On a Wednesday, Caleb opened a new bank account to keep things clean. On a Thursday, Quinn brought an old tin of nails and began fixing the porch rail as if forgiveness could be secured with new wood and a steady hand. On Friday evening, Lily found her grandmother sitting at the edge of the dock, her feet almost touching the black water. "Grandma," she said, "you're cold. Let's go inside." Martha shook her head. "I'm warm enough," she whispered. "I'm just trying to remember who we were before all this." Behind them, the house exhaled. Across the water, a truck downshifted on the highway the lake could already hear coming. When Tara came back, the air changed. She stepped off the bus with a suitcase in each hand and the look of a woman who learned to be brave in other people's kitchens. The town remembered her as the one who left, the practical daughter-in-law who filed for a temporary separation to make a work visa simpler, then sent money home with notes that smelled faintly of lavender and exhaustion. She walked up the green driveway at dusk. The house wore its tiredness like a shawl. The lake reflected a sky too pale to be believed. Martha was in her chair by the window when Tara came in. They said each other's names like prayers, not loud, not theatrical, but full. "You look good." Martha lied. "You too." Tara lied back. They held hands and let the quiet speak. After a while, Tara said, "I thought the money would hold us together." Martha smiled, the way women do when they've learned what money actually buys. Victor appeared in the doorway, shoulders rounded, hope flickering on and off behind his eyes. "Tara," he said, "I didn't know you were—" "Yes," she answered. She didn't ask where he'd been. The smell of smoke and old beer traveled faster than explanations. Caleb cleared his throat from the kitchen, as if business might save them. "Good you're here," he said, too brisk for tenderness. "We're close on the deal. We'll need your signature." As Tara shook her head. "Not tonight. That night." Martha told Tara small things, what lilies bloomed in May, which board creaked first on the porch, where the coffee tins hid extra cash. Lily didn't know about. She kept forgetting the end of her sentences and smiling at the beginnings. Just before dawn, with the lake as dark as absence. Martha's breath went shallow and then shallower still. She looked past Tara's shoulder at something no one could see. "Forgive each other," she said. "Don't leave love in the house when you go." Tara kissed her forehead. "Rest now." Martha rested. The funeral happened 2 days later, under a sky that couldn't decide if it would rain. People came with casseroles and condolences. Someone set up folding chairs in the yard. A cousin read a psalm with the standing rhythm of a man who'd practiced in his head 100 times. Lily leaned into Tara and shook in the quiet way grief sometimes chooses. Then the envelopes began to appear, white and cream. A few with gold borders, many with checks, some with cash. In towns like this, generosity is a ledger you hope God balances kindly. Caleb took responsibility for the envelope box. He wrote names in a notebook and stacked bills straight. Megan, his wife, stood nearby with a face so composed it felt like a decision. Victor drifted, hugging anyone who met his eyes, crying at odd intervals, vanishing for minutes at a time. Quinn carried chairs. He liked tasks that didn't require nouns like why. When the crowd thinned, the family gathered in the kitchen with the envelopes between them. The smell of roast chicken hovered like an old hymn. Caleb tapped the box. We need to deposit the funeral gifts and settle expenses. There's also Mom's small life insurance payout. I'll manage the account and distribute after Victor's jaw tightened. You manage everything, don't you? Caleb didn't blink. Someone has to. Tara stood. Before anything else, can we keep the room quiet? This is still her house. Megan sighed softly. We're just being practical. Tara, funerals cost money. Lily's voice cut through the adults like a bell. Grandma asked us to forgive each other. The room went still. Victor reached for an envelope. I just need a little to cover. Caleb closed his hand over the box. No. Victor's face colored. I took care of Dad's funeral. Remember, everyone forgot who paid the florist. But I remember. You paid with Mom's savings. Caleb said, not unkindly, just finally. Tara placed her palm on the table. Enough. Victor looked at her as if remembering who she was costs him something. I can fix this, he said, voice breaking. I swear, just give me what Tara asked, a reason, a day, a decade. Victor's silence was a confession. They divided the envelopes into neat piles and dirty feelings. Caleb deposited what needed depositing. Megan cataloged what needed cataloging. Victor left before the last hymn. Quinn stayed to sweep because he always stayed to sweep. When the house fell quiet, Tara walked to the window where Martha had watched the lake. The water held the sky without comment. Thank you, she whispered, to the wrong person and the right place after the funeral. Tara woke each morning to a world that hadn't learned it was missing someone. She cleaned the kitchen as if order could be a kind of grief. She packed the photo frames in sweaters because the glass felt colder than it should. She found 4 lists in Martha's handwriting groceries, birthdays, a poem about lilies, and the words, "Don't leave love in the house when you go." Beth arrived 2 days later, the younger sister with a strong back and a tired husband. She brought gumbo in a pot, heavy enough to ground the room. They sat on the porch and let cicadas stitch up the silence. I thought working in Canada would change everything, Tara said. It did, Beth replied. It changed you. The rest sat still and grew roots you couldn't see. They didn't talk about the remittances that vanished the way fog does when the sun pretends to care. They didn't talk about the title loan on Victor's truck, or the debts with names no one speaks aloud in church. They didn't talk about the separation papers Tara signed to make a job possible, a doorway easier, a marriage lighter than the law liked. Sometimes the story is true, even when the details are complicated. Toward evening, a man knocked on the door with a debt that had a face. He wore a polite smile and a ring that flashed in a way politeness never does. Is Victor around? He asked. We've got an arrangement that needs attention. Tara held the door. He's not here. Well, the man said, schedules can be flexible, but numbers aren't. Maybe you or the family could... Beth stepped forward. This is a mourning house. He tipped his hat, the way men do when they want to remain in your memory as a gentleman instead of a problem. Condolences, he said, and left a card anyway after he drove off. Megan appeared on the walk like a storm that already happened. People are asking questions. Tara, about the money, about the land, about where Victor is. Caleb's trying to keep it straight, but he can't if what Tara asked. If you make it messy. Tara laughed once, without humor. Mess was here before I got back. Rain began without thunder, the kind that slides in through screen doors and sticks to your hair. The lake answered with a dark shiver. Inside, Lily was folding her grandmother's sweaters. She looked smaller in the doorway than she had the day before. We should go, she said, voice steady, the way bravery sometimes is only because there isn't time to be afraid. Tonight, before people decide what we owe them. Tara stared at the room, the clock, the chair, the window, the lake. Her heart counted what couldn't be packed. A laugh at the sink, a prayer over a pie, a hand on a fevered forehead. All right, she said, 2 suitcases. They moved quietly, documents, some clothes, the photo of Martha with lilies, a coffee tin of bills Martha had hidden with the good sugar. Beth found them at the door and didn't try to stop the moment she knew had been walking toward them since July. I'll take you to the station, she said. The roads were a soft river. The town was a softer memory. They passed the diner where everyone knew everything and the church where God filed it, all under forgive if you can. At the Greyhound station, the fluorescent lights made everyone look like they were telling the truth. Beth hugged her sister and held on a little too long. "You'll call when you get there," she said. "I will." She turned to Lily. "Take care of your mother." "Okay." Lily nodded, clutching the ticket like a vow. The bus hissed the way old animals do when they're asked to carry too much. They climbed aboard with their 2 suitcases and the piece of the house that had decided to live in them. From the window, Tara watched Beth grow smaller, then not at all. Rain made all faces anonymous. Tail lights became rosary beads moving across a dark street. The bus rolled out of town, past the lake that refused to be anything but itself. Tara leaned her forehead against the glass and let the vibration blur what hurt. She thought of Martha's last words, of the dock, of the way love becomes a room you can't keep paying for. She thought of the road that would soon cut the lake into maps and measurements. She closed her eyes. The real curse isn't in the land, she thought. It's in the greed that grows when love runs dry. Back at the house, Beth stood on the porch and watched the rain erase footprints. She wasn't sending them away. She was guarding the part of them that had to leave in order to live. In the dark, the lake tightened its surface against the sky. Later, men with heavy machines would come and mark lines no one could see yet. They would speak a dialect of progress that sounded like mercy until it did not. Weeks from now, the state would cut a check. Caleb would sign papers with a pen he almost believed in. Victor would show up with apologies, shaped like requests, and then disappear again. Quinn would salvage the shed and hope it felt like redemption. Megan would balance a ledger and sleep like a person who didn't owe anyone a story. And the house would remember. Houses do. It would remember a mother who fed catfish at dawn and spoke softly to a man the world had decided was gone. It would remember 3 boys who loved differently and not enough. It would remember a girl who read library books out loud because stories make the air warmer. It would remember 2 suitcases, a bus, and the way rain can make leaving look like absolution. In time, the lake would be mapped and measured, bridged and bordered, but water keeps the shape of what it touches. On some evenings, if you stand where the dock used to be and listen, you might hear the tiniest insistence of a home turning back toward the sun. Not to fix the past that's for saints and liars, but to learn this simple angle of mercy. Don't leave love in the house when you go. Carry it. Even if all you have left is a ticket, 2 suitcases, and a night of rain to teach you how.